Right, welcome to another video. This one is about how you answer questions on the carbon cycle. Okay, so there's two kind of questions that basically you can use the same stuff to answer. So they may ask you, explain the carbon cycle, which is basically how carbon moves through an ecosystem and is recycled. Or they may ask you, explain the movement of inorganic nutrients, one of which is carbon, plus energy in an ecosystem. So to answer both of these, you kind of can use the same answers. You just have to make sure you include the word energy in some of it. Let me show you what I mean. So here's some of the main points that will get you 7 marks. So first of all, use the word autotrophs. Auto means to automatically make their own food. Autotrophs or producers, these are plants, okay? Absorb nutrients from the atmosphere. What do they absorb? They absorb CO2. So they absorb carbon dioxide. So you can say that to get you your first mark. We don't mention energy just yet. Autotrophs use photosynthesis to produce organic compounds, which are carbohydrates. That's your glucose. Okay, that's your carbohydrates that are built up within the plants. So that already gets you 2 marks, and you can use this for both the questions. The use of energy, use energy from the sun for photosynthesis. So we're now introducing energy. Okay, so if your question is talking about energy as well, if your question mentions energy, that's where you start introducing energy. Use energy from the sun for photosynthesis. So now we know energy is entering the cycle from the sun. Okay, number 4, carbon compounds contain energy and carbon. So inside the carbohydrates is the energy stored as chemical energy. Okay, these are eaten by heterotrophs. This basically means that plants are now a store of energy and carbon, okay, in the form of carbohydrates, and they are eaten by heterotrophs, consumers. These are basically animals, okay, animals that eat plants. This energy and carbon is then passed along the food chain, okay, from animal to animal. Okay, so imagine an antelope eats some vegetation and it gets the energy and the carbon inside its body, and then a lion eats the antelope and then it gets energy and carbon within its body, and so forth. Now, go down to here. Respiration returns carbon to the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. So that's us breathing out. We breathe out, we eat this, and then we breathe out carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide goes back into the atmosphere, and then it starts again here, so it's recycled, okay? We also release energy as ATP and heat, okay? So we release energy as ATP and heat. So that energy goes off into the atmosphere, into other forms, and it is not recycled. Decomposers release methane through anaerobic respiration. So underneath the soil, you've got some decomposers that are working without any oxygen, okay, anaerobically, and they're actually releasing methane into the atmosphere. And then finally, you can say that combustion of fossil fuels, which we do every day when we burn oil and gas and coal, combustion of fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now, it's not quite finished yet. You can see these 7 basic points to get 7 marks, but if you want to be a bit more specific as well, I want you to add these in. Methane, so remember, methane is released by anaerobic respiration, those little decomposers under the soil. Methane is oxidized into carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Remember that methane looks like this, okay? So it's got like H's, and it's got carbon in there. It basically turns into, you can combine it with oxygen and turn it into carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So methane is oxidized into carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That can get you a mark. Now, back to the energy one. Energy is used to carry out life functions such as synthesis, so building things and processes and metabolic processes within your body. Growth, literally growing, and then movement. This is used by animals and plants. Energy is used to carry out life functions. Energy is lost from the ecosystem and not recycled. All right, so that's a very important point. We don't recycle the energy. It gets lost from the ecosystem and goes elsewhere. It's not destroyed, but it goes elsewhere. Energy is lost from the ecosystem. Okay, so you can mention this point about energy. This will get you another mark if you're a bit more specific. Nutrients are recycled, thank God, by plants absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So plants will take carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, completing the cycle for carbon. And decomposers also recycle minerals. So the minerals that you find the inorganic minerals that you find in the soil, like potassium, nitrogen, carbon, obviously, phosphorus, they are recycled by decomposers. They can break down those molecules, turn them into different molecules, and plants can absorb them. So they're recycled by decomposers. And then you can mention limescale from shells and coral under the sea is a carbon sink. So you can mention that just to say that you've mentioned a carbon sink, and then the examiner will say, oh, they've mentioned all these points, and additionally they've gone into detail about carbon sinks, they've gone into detail about where the energy goes, what it's used for, and they've gone into detail about methane, about the anaerobic form of methane. So what you want to do is get a nice picture of the carbon cycle, get a picture of an ecosystem showing the recycling of inorganic nutrients, understand that the energy is tied up with carbohydrates. So when you get two different questions like this, explain the carbon cycle and explain the movement of inorganic nutrients, that's that, plus energy. So when you see that and say, oh God, what have I got to talk about energy for? Remember that the energy is just locked up in the carbohydrates, so you can answer it in the same way, okay? You just got to talk about where the energy comes into the system. Well, we get the energy from the sun. The plants are able to harness the energy from the sun. And where does it go out? It gets released as ATP and heat. And then as long as you mention that the energy is locked up inside these carbohydrates, which are then passed down the food chain, you're completely fine. Okay, so you can basically use the same structure to answer both of these kind of questions. So whether you're talking about carbon being recycled or whether you're talking about the movement of energy through an ecosystem, you're going to use the same points. Okay, so go back, pause the video, and then try and figure out a way that you're going to memorize these, I would say, 7 points here, and then these additional points here. So 10 points you want to memorize about the carbon cycle, about inorganic nutrients, about energy in the ecosystem. All of these points will be able to answer that question for you, and you should be able to get 7 marks. Okay, good luck.